Thanks for joining us for another episode of Retail War Games. Today we sit down with Chris Washburn, CEO of Ari.
So tell me, so you lived in Southern Cal,
Yeah.
and you did that after you did your JD.
Yeah. So I graduated from law school, business school, and then right after that, we moved to Southern California, took a job with Nissan, and that was just right in the LA area. And
Yeah, so not a lot of people work for Nissan on their corporate council and then decide to start a bike company.
Yeah.
It's kind of a different path.
It is.
Pretty
Well, it
impressive
wasn't,
on both
from what
sides.
I saw too, it was Nissan, but then there was multiple motor and electric vehicle companies
Yeah.
between.
Yeah. So what happened was when I was down at Nissan working there, I just got a call out of the blue from a headhunter that said, "Hey, would you like to come and speak with Lee Iacocca?"
No way.
And Lee Iacocca, as you know, is, famous from Ford and then Chrysler. And so me looking at it, I'm going, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk with him. So I found myself sitting across the desk from him, and he was telling me about his new vision of electric vehicles of all types, not just cars, but also light electric vehicles.
What year was this?
This would have been back in 2000.
No way.
Yeah. And so I was looking at that and saying, well, I know this path. If I just go right down this corporate path, I can see where I would be,
Oh, yeah.
And this just sounded like exciting. Who knows what was going to happen?
Yeah.
And so I joined his company, and he was at a time before electric vehicles were cool,
Yeah.
and we started in the light electric vehicle segment, which was ironically bikes. So he trademarked the term e-bike. And so we used that with our company. It was EV Global Motors, but the brand of bikes that we had were e-bikes. And back at the time, we were stoked if we could get an electric bike that weighed less than 80 pounds.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
So that was the difference.
That's a small motorcycle.
Yeah, exactly.
We did it.
Yeah. And so to lead into how that happened, I eventually, progressed in that small company, but became president of the company. And he and I were driving from one of his homes in Bel Air out to another home that he had in Palm Springs. And you know how in a conversation you'll just talk along, going through business stuff,
Yeah.
whatever, and then the conversation kind of dies a little bit, and you start talking about other stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember asking this question. I said, well, I know why I'm doing this. I don't have any money, but why are you doing this? You have
Yeah.
all the money in the world, a startup company.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, well, you can only do so much golf in a day. I
Yeah.
thought, oh, okay, cool. And we finished up the thing. He left to another place that he had in Italy and was gone for about a month or so. And he came back and he said, you know what? You're right. And I'm going, what was I right about? We've had 100
Yeah.
conversations since then. And he says,
Yeah.
I don't think I want to do this anymore. I want to sell the company.
Oh, whoa.
And I was like, maybe I shouldn't have asked that question. I'm going to be out of a job or something,
It's like, what did the stock price just do?
Right. Yeah. So typical fashion, he said, you're welcome to buy it if you want it. And I go, great, how much? And of course, he wanted way too much money, at least more money than I had.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I'll be happy to sell it, help you sell it. And so we kind of went on a roadshow selling the company, eventually sold it off to a company locally down there. But in that process, we met a few other companies, and one of them said, we got to be honest with you, we don't want to buy the company, but we want to hire you guys, the team. And I said, thank you, that's very nice of you, but that's unethical. I'm out here, on his dime selling
Right,
this
for sure.
company. And so we ended up selling it, but that company kept coming and talking and pursuing us.
Oh, wow.
And that led to my next step, other side of the country, back in Washington, D.C., which was another startup named Wavecrest. And they were doing electric type of stuff also. And they were just investing a ton of money into some really cool things. I mean, they had really cool motor system that they were using a battery system with, and it was really ahead of its time. And so I joined, that company back there, and that was the next phase. And there are a lot of details involved in that, but long and the short of it is, after a couple of years of traveling, literally about 50 weeks a year,
Oh boy.
and not seeing your family, the money was great, everything was good, but the guilt that you have,
Yeah.
I would come home at night and my wife would, on the weekend, if I made it home, all she wanted to do was go out. All I wanted to do was have a peanut butter sandwich, go
right.
home.
Do something normal.
Yeah. And so there was one time I just stepped across an airplane threshold one time, and I just said, I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
Wow.
And so I quit, and she said, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, I don't know. We'll figure out something. But that was the genesis of Ari
No way.
right there.
Really?
So, yeah.
Unreal.
So did you come into, and we'll talk about the rebrand here in a little bit
Yeah.
from Fazari to Ari, but did you come into the start of the company then with a focus on electric?
No.
Okay.
In fact, back when I was with EV Global, we were selling electric bikes, but here was the question that always came up. Why would somebody want an electric bike? Aren't bikes meant for exercise?
That's
Why
right.
would I want to
Defeats the
motivate that?
purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
And of course, that totally changed now. But we
completely.
only introduced electric bikes here just a couple years ago.
Right.
A few years ago.
Well, it's amazing how much that trends come up. I mean, we ran a brand, a couple of them, the last 6-7 years ago. One was called Oyama,
Yeah.
and another one called Wildcat.
Yeah.
And when I first saw Oyama, and I was like, electric bike, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to sell this. Like, I just thought there was going to be like a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the next year, a couple of years, I'm like, oh, other brands are starting to do this. And now it's unbelievable. It's kind of like, the only thing I can compare it to is like how pickleball's kind of taken off. It's just like,
Yeah.
it just became mainstream. And I'd imagine it's a really substantial part of your business. I mean, you've got the electric part, you've got the mountain bike, and then you've got the road bikes.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's funny. When it started out, and by the way, in this company, I kind of resisted doing electric bikes at that point. I said, I've been there, done that. I am not doing that. We are going to be focused on now what is called analog bikes, meaning non-electric bikes.
Yeah, you're a purist.
Yeah, exactly. And but you see the market changing a little bit more, and I obviously have a lot of knowledge and education in that area, and so we introduced a couple of bikes in there, and it started off that electric bikes, and especially when we sold them back in the previous company, it was for people that were older. They were the baby boomer generation, and now we've seen that market has totally changed. Certainly it's that generation, but it's all generations. It's some of our best athletes are using these bikes to train on because they can just get better at riding. And so from a market that started off as just a small percentage, it is growing and growing and growing till we project it's going to be a major part of our business this year. As you can see, we're introducing, we now have 5-6 electric bikes that we'll have coming out.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit earlier about how you decided to kind of skip the typical distribution of going into stores, QBP and all those other guys, Holly, and you sell directly to customers.
Yeah.
What was the genesis of that thought, and are you glad you went that route?
Well, it wasn't that I wanted to do that originally.
It's hard to break in.
Yeah. And in fact, that's exactly right. We're talking about a brand new company in an established industry.
Going after Specialized and all these others. Yeah.
How do you get how do you get shelf space in a dealer?
Yeah.
You're going to be relegated to the back someplace, even if you can even get into one of these dealers.
That's
you
right.
know. And so what I was looking at is what is the angle that we could use. And one of the thoughts that originally came to me was, the whole ride experience. If you don't have a bike that fits you right, it's not going to. You can have the best shoe in the world, but if it doesn't fit right, who cares?
Yeah.
And so I presented a lot of dealers back at that time with, we're going to do some custom fitting of these bikes. We'll stock in a lot of extra components and help fit these bikes more for them. And most of the dealers at the time, they're like, oh, that just seems
Inventory
like too much
management.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, too much
Yeah.
inventory and everything. So, my frame of mind was, all right, I'm going to prove that it'll work. And once I prove that it'll work, we'll see if they'll come at that point, and I can get the avenue. We did. We started down that road. We showed that it actually worked, and the dealers did come. But at that point, we're going, you know what? We figured it out. We've got our own
Do
niche.
it on our own.
Yeah, we're going to do it. So
Do you see much overlap between those that are mountain bikers to those that are road bikers? Or are they just, like forever it would always be, okay, the guys that come from Silicon Valley, they're the road bikers, right? You
Yeah.
see that now all over Silicon Slopes. And then mountain bikes seem like it was a totally different demographic, but I'd imagine they've kind of
Yeah.
mixed a little bit.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of overlap.
a lot of overlap. But you're right, there are definitely groups. And then you can even break it down further, because in the road segment, for example, I mean, you've got triathletes, you've got these crit racers, or these, Grand Fondo riders, or just people that are riding recreationally. And then another big group are the gravel bikers, that are coming out. And then on the mountain bike side, same thing. You've got downhill riders, enduro riders, cross-country riders, So there really are a lot of segments in each of these things. And it makes it difficult to, not difficult, but I think it's actually fun. You can, you really have to tailor products to each of these markets and each of these segments.
There's a big difference in cost and components and everything else, just kind of.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. I think the big thing the big question that I have is, from the advent of like Peloton, is that kind of increase the awareness and raise the tide for all bike companies? Have you noticed any sort of blip where it's kind of increased?
Yeah, maybe. Peloton has been fantastic. For example, in the wintertime, when there are bad days here, I'll ride a trainer. I'll actually ride a tax trainer, for example, we'll hook up one of our bikes to, and you get this whole virtual reality
Simulation.
experience,
Yeah.
simulation, that you can ride in Europe or wherever, and you get a lot of bucket list rides. And I love that you can do it. But personally, and I think a lot of people are the same way, there is nothing still like actually riding outside, experiencing nature
Yeah, for
and
sure.
doing some of those things. So yeah, it may be a stepping stone to get into it, but they're really different markets in so many ways.
Yeah.
So, Colin, you kind of run in the same circles. You grew up doing the biking thing
Yeah.
and similar contacts. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So growing up in Durango, the group of kids that I was riding with, many of them are now, Sepp Kuss being probably, in my opinion, the best American cyclist right now. I mean, we would go to bike practice and ride for 2 hours hard, and then he lived 45 minutes outside of town uphill, and he would just ride home after practice. And I'm like waiting for mom to come pick me up.
Yeah.
But on that note, having experience in racing, I'm curious, just having a familiarity with a lot of the different mountain bike brands. Talk about, because mountain bikes and road bikes, but bikes are complex.
Yeah.
They have a million parts, and you have to source them from a lot of different companies, and the industry is not easy to get into.
Right.
Why did you pick Utah, and
Yeah.
how did you get to a point where you're like, we're growing? Because Utah is a great market, a lot of mountain biking, but there's a lot of companies that already have a great presence here.
Yeah. Well, I think Utah, to answer that question first, was, we were living in Southern California. I was traveling all the time. And my wife kind of said at that point, well, look, if you're traveling all the time, it doesn't really matter where we live. I want to go back closer to family. And so we moved our family back here. I love Utah. You've got such a diverse geography here. From, you can road bike here, you can mountain bike here. It's the best of everything. Moab, St. George,
Yeah.
The mountains up here, there's just great riding. So, it was a place that we loved and we wanted to be. That's why we chose that. But, in terms of the complexity of it, you're exactly right. I mean, it's a hard industry to
The margins
get
are
into.
terrible,
Yeah.
especially at shops. But I imagine that's partially why you guys went direct to consumer.
Yeah. And for us, a lot of those, even the direct to consumer avenue, back when we started it, we were not cool at that point. It was like you're fish or fowl, and if you're not going through a typical dealership, consumers may look at it one way, but the industry itself, it was really hard to source a lot of products. I mean, dealing with a Shimano or a SRAM or Fox or any of these companies, it was difficult.
Expand your team's skill set and drive conversions. Volcanic Retail University offers specialized courses to keep your brand ahead in the retail game. Go to university.volcanicretail.io and apply code podcast50 for 50% off.
You know, once we got in and established the relationships, and they saw that we were, I think, you know, business, as I've found, it's all about relationships.
Yep.
And it's, you know, I joke a lot of times that we'll sign a little contract with a pro athlete, but yet most of our business, our big business, is done on a handshake, and it's by reputation.
Yep.
And so, you know, it's all about establishing those relationships with various suppliers and making sure that you really perform. And of course, you expect them to perform. It's you know, it's a two-way street. But that's kind of how we grew that. And you know, and for us, it's been a little bit of a hockey stick type of thing, where it was along like this, and then you know, the last little while, it's been, you know.
Yeah.
So we've augmented the sales for a lot of brands. I think over 500 of them, and without a doubt, I'd say 95% of the most successful ones are the ones that started out direct to consumer.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it feels like it's, and you know, putting money back into their social, keeping that extra margins. I was listening to a Business Wars a couple of days ago, and they're talking about Elon Musk and how he decided. It was a big, huge thing, right? Because just like in the bike industry, franchises are, you know, they can own the whole thing. Same with, you know, Nissan, right? The franchisees are kind of the king.
Yeah.
And he was trying to convince shareholders that they don't need their own dealerships, that they just got to sell direct. And it's kind of really boomed, and it seems like that ultimately kind of obviously paid off as a strategy of yours.
Yeah.
So how hard is it to get the initial amount of awareness for a brand, like a bike brand,
Yeah.
that's obviously not being supported on the typical store level?
Mm-hmm. That was absolutely difficult.
Yeah.
Because what you have to do is you've got to, I think any brand, you've got to develop a level of trust with the consumer. And so for us, it was also, we weren't selling like a $10 thing online or a $15 thing, which somebody might go, well, who cares, you know, if they're going to be around or not, I'll buy it. I mean, we're selling $3, $4, $5, $10,000 bikes online. And how do we develop that trust? And a couple of things I've always looked at it in business is just remove the obstacles as much as you can. And so one of the things that we did was this custom fitting. And so we call it a 23-point custom setup. And we said, we will guarantee that your bike will fit you better than if you went into a dealership and got it fit.
That's really cool.
So we take a lot of those. The other big one that, you know, how does somebody in upstate New York or Florida or whatever, you know, shell out that amount of money and know that, you know, that they're going to get a quality product? And so we did what was called a love it or return it guarantee. If you don't love it, you can return it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we back them with a lifetime warranty. So we had to do a lot of those extra steps to really help people feel comfortable. And
what was the percentage of actual returns? Because I bet once people got the bike actually in their hands, and they had the conscious not thinking, oh boy, I can't return this. They automatically probably turn that off in their brain. Yeah. And then they allowed themselves to actually just enjoy the experience. I mean, I bet it's pretty low.
Yeah, actually it is. And surprisingly, because when I first presented it to the staff, it was a book I was reading sometime, and it was saying, put yourself in a deficit to your consumer, to where they look like it's a no-brainer to do this. Are these guys stupid or what to do something like this?
Right.
And so I was thinking, how could I do that? And that was this love it or return it guarantee. And I remember saying it to the staff, and kudos to them. They just came back and saying, no way, we're going to get killed on this. You know, there's going to be abusers.
What a risk.
There's going to be people that'll just look at it as an extended rental or whatever, you know. And certainly there have been a few of those. For sure. You know, but the other side for us, it has been so much better. And I think it also ties into one other thing that has been core for us. we always say we control our own destiny.
Yeah.
And we really do. We don't rely necessarily on some company to build our bikes for us or, do all these things. When we have an idea, we have industrial designers that'll draw it out. We'll have engineers that'll, actually make it manufacturable. We'll then manufacture them. We sell them. We market them. We'll support them after the sale. So we always say we get to control every step of our process. And then we always put a big but. We get to control every step of our process. And if we don't execute on every one of those things, I mean,
That's right.
direct to consumer is also tough because where are you going to get your reviews? I mean, online. And it's usually going to be, for 100 people that might have an incredible experience, it's going to be the one guy that had a less than acceptable.
It's going to post.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing about reviews. And you go on Amazon, you read all about the different reviews, and you can tell really quick which ones are fake because they all have just fantastic reviews. The reality is every single time I buy something that's like a nice product or something on Amazon, the last thing in my mind is I'm going to go spend time and leave a good review.
Yeah.
It's always if only if you're
Unless you
furious.
had a bad experience.
Exactly. Unless you're pissed off.
If you're furious, then that's the time you leave the review.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of a difficult balance, right? Like I was reading just some reviews actually an hour before we got in here, and there's 130 5-star reviews, and there was nothing less than a 5-star review. And all I thought is, well, they're giving away something because that's just not realistic, right?
Yeah. Talk about people from experience buying bikes. When I buy a new mountain bike, it's like getting a new car.
It's a big deal.
I mean, it's a big deal. The
commitment.
journey and the research that goes into I feel like the average person buying, especially on the higher end, your top end, your road and mountain bikes, they're spending weeks and weeks of research through forums and stuff, reading about a bike.
Yeah.
How do you guys handle the marketing to build a company and a story that like I could trust, because like you said, when you buy a bike, especially in your early years, you don't know anything about this brand. And getting that personal custom fit is exciting, but outside of that, what is Ari? Like, what is an emotion do you want to put in a mountain biker?
Oh, yeah.
I love that you say that because I think for bikes, people identify, it becomes part of them.
Oh, totally.
I mean, it's like Ford versus Chevy, the truck wars that used to occur a lot. And maybe they still occur nowadays. But we do see that in this industry a lot because people will say, well, this is part of who I am. This is what I'm about. Yeah. And so we have to get into a lot of who we are as a company, the company persona that we want to have. We are not necessarily the bro culture, of if you don't know who we are and what we're about, then you don't deserve to ride one of our bikes. That's not what it is. It's a little bit more of, we look at it as inviting, that we are helpful guides, that, hey, if you're considering getting into this bike world, let us help you along that path.
For schlubs like me, they're just like, I could probably do that. But you have to educate them,
No, I love that.
We put it into 3 words. And we try to do this with all of our staff. We always say, create exceptional experiences. Yeah. And so we empower our staff through that creation process. Make the decision. Figure out what's going to be right for the customer. Exceptional is more than acceptable. Acceptable is okay, but make it exceptional. And then the experience is, we are not selling bikes. We're selling an experience, a lifestyle, something that will change you for the better. And that's what
the
we're
bike
really
just happens
trying
to be the vehicle to do that.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Get me in the mind of the design process, in the mind of the engineer. I mean, that's got to be a really interesting dialogue that you have with them each day.
Well, one of the things that we like to do, going back to that creative process, is there are people in our company, particularly on the design process, where I tell them, look, I want 20 to 30% of your time I don't care what it is, just get out and sketch and just dream.
Interesting.
Then the other side, obviously, we got to make money and we got to figure out how to take those ideas and make them realistic. But so that's what it is.
Fostering a lot of creativity.
A lot of creativity. And we do that really in almost every segment of our company to make sure that, how are we marketing this? Are we using a creative process to do that? Are we really telling the story, as you had said? Something that makes somebody say, I want to get off my couch, or I want to do something else. And one of the things that we've found is if we develop products that are good enough that the best athletes in the world will ride and want to ride, the rest of the market will come.
It's interesting how like the whole biking experience is so different in different countries. Like, you go to Europe and that's just their mode of transportation.
Yeah.
And then you get here and it's almost like because we all drive our cars everywhere, it's almost like you have to find a reason to get healthy and also give yourself a reason to have enjoyment.
Yeah.
And so it seems like the types of rides are very different than they would be in Europe.
The U.S. market is by far and away recreational.
Yeah.
In the sense that we're not using it to commute from A to B. Certainly we have that.
Yeah.
But compared to Europe, it's very different. So over here, it is more about aspirational. I actually like it a lot because I think a lot of times if it turns into just pure transportation, and certainly we'll cater to that market too, but if it turns into pure transportation, then it becomes more mundane. Biking is something that people aspire to do. It's like why you go to your job, because you're thinking, man, on the weekend, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to have this fun by yourself or with a group. That's another aspect that I love about biking is, unlike soccer, which I love, you don't have to get a whole team together to do it. You can do it by yourself or with a group, however you want to do it.
Yeah. This may be hard to answer, but bike technology moves quickly.
Yeah.
How do you guys keep up with? Because I know one of my favorite things to read about is like, the new shifting technology. I mean, with Axis, coming out and wireless, shifting. That 3-4 years ago, that was like, holy crap, this is wild. How do you keep up with that?
Well, I think number one, we have very good communication channels with all of our suppliers, and so we're into communication on stuff that is occurring out 3-4 years in the future. But I think also one of the cool things is that communication goes both ways. We are, and the bike industry is set up as such that we are a frame manufacturer, and we will put components on from big component manufacturers. And so there is a two-way street of communication there.
Right.
As we're developing better frame technology, we can relay that back into some of these component manufacturers of how they're doing things, and vice versa the other way. So SRAM, for example, came out with this this new Axis technology, or even since then transmission technology, which is get rid of the derailleur hanger on a bike and just make it a lot cleaner and simpler to ride. Well, we looked at that and we're so excited about it that we actually came out and did the exact same stuff on our roadside. And SRAM even at that point was saying, whoa, we're not even prepared for that. But that's, where the direction will go that way too.
Does it turn into a race? I'm curious between, you have Specialized, you have Trek, you have these massive companies with tons of money to make quick engineering changes.
Yeah.
Is it hard to keep up with that? Is it a race, or is it more like handling?
I mean, yes and no. I think in some regards, well, first of all, I'm competitive by nature and I love that aspect of it. That's what gets me going every day is the new innovation, the things that we have in our market. But, and certainly not a knock against those big companies because they do have deep resources. We have to go back to what we can compete on, and actually we can move faster in markets than they can in many respects. So something that may take 2 or 3 or 4 years to develop, we can jump into that market.
Interesting.
We're also able to go into a market that maybe doesn't even interest them because it's not big enough.
If you can't move without pain, you can't do the things that you love. That's why KT exists, to help relieve the minor aches and pains of living an active life. KT Tape is the #1 trusted choice of physicians, therapists, athletic trainers, everyday active people, and thousands of professional athletes. Since 2008, KT Tape has been used by the athletes of Team USA. So whether you're running on a treadmill or at home or training for the Olympics, KT Tape is here to help you reach your potential.
We came out with, for example, a really cool electric fat bike that we introduced, which in the grand scheme of things is probably not that big, but we look at it as totally cool.
Explain that, the electric fat bike. What is?
So a regular fat tire bike it was a market that kind of went big and then it came down.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of coming back again.
Oh, interesting.
What they are is they used to be solely for one purpose or another, maybe like riding on the snow. Which, by the way, around here over the Alpine Loop, they groom that in the wintertime. It is so fun to ride a fat bike on there, or riding out on the beach, you know. What this electric fat bike, how it came about is ironically from some other outdoor industries. We host, for example, a Overlander event down at our facilities once a year. And these Overlanders are these guys that are not pulling a trailer up. If they do, it's this cool trailer jacked up, or they have these rigs that they want to get out of the traditional camping areas, and they'll go out further remotely into some place. I mean, the coolest rigs you've ever seen. But once they get to their destination, it's like, well, what are we going to do? And so they mentioned to us, they said, we would die for a really cool electric fat bike that we could haul our gear with out on some of these adventures. And so we took that, and it was one of our creative processes, and we just decided, all right, what the heck, we're going to do it. And that was like a year ago. We introduced that here, a few months ago, but the actual bike will launch here in June. And
That's incredible.
Yeah, really
so
fast
really,
turnaround.
really quick to hit specific niches, and also it seems like just the ability to kind of read that the customers' wants, and like if you're one of these big huge corporations, you're thinking, hey, I get 95% of my revenue on these main parts of the biking industry, and so maybe we don't want to spend all of our resources in that other 5%.
Yeah,
and so they don't pick it up on purpose.
Right.
So a question I had for you is, it's very interesting when you look at the different industries in retail from like two totally polar opposite sides. You've got outdoor retailer with all the outdoor brands that are very collaborative with each other. They don't see each other as competition. And then you see like fashion apparel where everything is just really cutthroat.
Yeah.
Where does the biking channel fit within that spectrum?
I would think it's probably somewhere in between.
Yeah.
I have always kind of tried to live life with an abundance mentality.
Yeah.
That as soon as I personally look at life and say it's a fixed pie and I got to fight over this piece of pie with somebody else, it gets kind of discouraging and depressing.
It does, yeah.
And so I've always looked at it as it's an abundance mentality. Let's grow the market.
Yeah, let's
for
grow it all
everybody.
together.
Yeah. And so, with that, I mean, there's a few things that we say internally, just principles of ours is we never speak bad about anybody else.
That's good.
We're always, it doesn't mean that we're not going to sell our products and say, here's how we can compete. But, at the end of the day, you want to get more people out on bikes and riding and experiencing that joy, that thrill, frankly. I mean, that's one of the things with our name Ari. It means to exist or to be, and it ties into being in the moment.
Yeah.
And so for me, the riding, I exercise, people will laugh at this, but I exercise first for my mental well-being and then for my physical well-being. If I am not exercising first, stress starts to accumulate and I start to worry about things.
You make bad decisions.
Exactly. And so I'll get out and I'll bike. I bike almost every day. That is where some of my best thoughts happen.
That's right.
It clears my mind. It gets me in the right mindset to get into work and to kind of try to work to perform. And so, that expansiveness is really what we're trying to do, is to just look for ways to grow it for everybody.
I was going to ask, so I'm glad you brought it up. Ari, say again, what did that mean?
To exist or to be.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Interesting.
So you guys just went through a massive rebrand.
Yeah.
What's that like?
I'll tell you what.
Good luck, man.
What did Fazari mean? Did that?
Yeah. So Fazari was also a made-up word, and Fez Ari, when we when we came up with it originally, Ari always meant that, so, but it just sounded cooler to have Fez Ari in there. But as we have grown and grown, we got to a stage here about a year ago where we were experiencing so much growth that, and we had so many new bike products that were coming out, and we said, we're always of the mindset of don't leave any stone unturned.
Yeah.
Look at whatever we're doing, and if there's something that may not be resonating right or something that we're not doing, we'll tear it down and rebuild it again and make it better. And so as we were, really doing, getting the international growth aspect going on it,
Yeah.
we started to look at that and say, this might be a good way to just simplify and keep our message clean and pure on that one. And so Ari by itself, I love it because it's a name that really does well in a lot of languages. I mean, it's got some cool meanings in other languages like eagle or lion or ant. Kind of like ant because, we kind of think of ourselves as the small guy, but lifting above your weight.
Right.
That's how Anta Retail started, is that whole same concept.
Hey, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Tell me, I'd love to get into your brain a little bit about battery life.
Oh, yeah.
And, kind of how it's changed over the years. Are they like lithium ion batteries? What do you do? I mean, how long do they last before you have to do a recharge, for example?
So remember back to those first bikes that we built?
Yeah.
Way back when with e-bikes? Those were lead acid batteries.
No way.
That's why they were 80 plus pounds, 85
I love
pounds.
the lead acids.
Carrying a
And
car
then
battery.
Yeah.
The
That's
next
exactly right.
generation that we had were nickel metal hydride batteries. And those were really cool too. They were light, but nickel metal hydride also has a memory component in it, meaning you have to drain it all the way down and then recharge it all the way back
Otherwise,
up.
if you do it halfway through, then you can only use half the battery next time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then we did lithium batteries, and I'm telling you, we were on the bleeding edge of those where, the cutting edge where we were struggling to get that to work properly. And lithium batteries, even though they're named the same thing, they've evolved a lot since those days. And so what's nice about lithium is it is the lightest technology that we have right now. There's other cool ones that are coming out, and we hope to be able to introduce those. But for now, that is it. There's no memory, and it really does have a low degradation over time. So, every battery over time is going to have a little bit of
Eventually die off.
Yeah, and it keeps it flatter longer before it starts to die off.
Right.
With that, it's all about getting the right amount of energy in the bike. And typical to cars right now, you know how there's range anxiety? That seems to be the biggest issue
yeah,
with
for
people
sure.
buying an electric vehicle,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yep.
It's like, but if I want to go to St. George or to LA, I mean, how many
I
times are
can't
going to
do
have to
it,
stop and charge? Is there going to be a place for me to do that? Same thing on bikes. And so we have gone through this and continued back and forth to go through that issue of how much range is good range that you can have on it. And so, we'll have some bikes that will take you for 8 hours on a ride.
Oh.
But on a bike, that's a lot of time on a bike for most people. To down to, maybe an hour or 2 or 3 hours on a bike. And so, it really kind of depends on what you're doing. But I think once people start to come back and see that, these batteries, even at 3 to 4 hours, is really good, or 5 hours on a bike. The other key to remember about bikes is they're all hybrid to begin with, meaning it's the electric power, but before that, it's the human power. So if you do run out of bike or a battery, you'll be able to get back. I mean, some of the bikes that we've got, one that we're introducing here in just a month, there's only a 7-pound penalty between the electric and the analog version.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meaning the whole battery motor and everything. It's
That's actually
incredible.
That
amazing.
is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I have a quick question for you. With the type of industry that you're at with professional bikes, how important of a role do advocates or sponsors or affiliates that are professional bikers play, or their testimonials in your industry?
I love that question. We actually look at it in 3 areas: athletes, influencers, and then ambassadors.
And
then, of course, customers after that. But the athletes are the tip of the spear for us. That's where you really prove that your products are what they are, if you'll win certain things. I mean, we were so excited. This year, we've got, for example, a mountain bike team that has won some of the biggest races of the year. They just won the dual slalom course at Sea Otter. And what that does is I think it's like the stamp of approval.
Yeah.
You know, the people will look at it and say, okay, I get it. That's
it's
awesome.
like Ford versus Ferrari. I mean, it's kind of what it reminds me of.
I was reading about that win. I mean, on online on Pink Bike. That is congratulations. Seriously.
Thank you.
That is a huge accomplishment.
And so that has been really huge for us. The other one are influencers. And influencers are like, think of YouTube, you know, Instagram, you know, any of those channels that are
Maybe not everyday users.
Right.
Yeah.
They're more of adventurous. I kind of think of it. And we do have a lot of those that also do well. That what they do is they relate to their core audience, and they're able to tell a story really well, and add again a level of trust. For me and branding, it's all about establishing that trust mechanism.
Well, and shout out to you guys for doing so well in Utah. I would say Fazari for years, and still is Ari now, is Utah's mountain bike company. You know, I mean, you have people like who is it, Jordan Bogart, who like huge brand ambassador for you guys, and I love following him. But then they put out the coolest. Was it the Utah Jazz edition of your? I can't remember which bike, but like everyone wanted that bike. Coolest bike ever.
By the way, can I just tell you what happened on that bike?
Please.
It was the funniest story. The Jazz and us, we did a collaboration on that. We did the whole paint job. We were going to have the announcement of this bike, and we did, I think, 30 limited edition bikes of that. The day the announcement was to come out, Rudy Gobert got COVID.
Oh my, no way.
No.
It was that day?
It was that day. And so we shut the whole thing down. I mean, you know, that's at the beginning of COVID.
Oh yeah, you won't see NBA for another year.
Yeah.
That was a bad day.
Now, funny enough, the bike still sold like that, but it was, you know, just
weird
one of those things.
timing. Oh my gosh.
In fact, right at the beginning of that, we had just built a brand new building, and we weren't quite ready to move into that building at that point. And then you start getting all this messaging coming out saying they're shutting things down, they're not going to allow you to go to work and everything. And I was worried sick about that. I mean, I didn't want to be stuck between two buildings. So we sent a message out to all the staff saying, we're shutting down for 2 days, and we're moving no matter what, you know, and getting into the new building, and then we'll deal with whatever came.
Yeah.
You know,
so on the ambassador question, tell us how that affects you know, a bike company like yours. Like how important is it to rely on ambassadors?
I think that is also one of our biggest ones, and principally because for us, when we originally did this, we just put kind of an email thing out to our email group, and we had, I think, 1,200 people apply for this ambassador program.
Oh wow!
And then all of a sudden we're going, whoa, we don't really even know what we're doing at this point. Let's scale this back. And there were a couple of other programs that we looked at that we really liked. And one of the things that I think was most important to us was we didn't want to pay these ambassadors. We did not want this to be some kind of a fake thing. We wanted them to be genuine, that they just truly love the brand.
That's right.
And so certainly they'll get, like, we'll host this event once a year where they'll be able to come out and they get sneak peeks on different things that are, you know, that are happening. But everything about it is, we want them to be honest. We want them to be genuine about it. So we started it down at like 25, and then we grew it up to 50, 100, and I think we're at like 150 now or something like that. But, you know, for us, that is a great channel for us to get true feedback from our core fan base, and to be able to also, you know, let them speak on our behalf.
So it sounds like if you were to rank just pure authenticity, it'd probably be professional athletes at the very beginning, because there's no line. It's all about, you know, the performance
of the bike,
and then ambassadors because they're not being paid.
Yeah.
And then influencers getting paid, but they reach a different type of audience.
Yeah.
Is that probably the correct order of?
Yeah, and I don't know that I would, because you know, some of my influencers might be looking at that and
Well, some of them might
wait,
be.
what are you
Yes.
saying?
Well, some of them might be.
They're all like children. How can you rank one child
Yeah,
above
they're,
another?
they're all
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
Just as somebody who's looking to actually like purchase, and I'm looking for reviews, just from my end consumer perspective,
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, I want to see what the professional athlete does, and I'd like to see the ambassadors who are not getting paid.
Yeah.
Right? Because influencers are obviously extraordinarily important.
You know, it's really funny that you said that, because we read this statistic someplace that said that media reviews are still important, but most people will actually want to hear from like an ambassador or just a consumer review. They trust that even more than
That's right.
a media review a lot of times.
Yep.
So,
Oh, for sure.
it's interesting. Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, I was wondering if we could talk Tour de France for just a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Favorite memories, Tour de France? Favorite cyclists all time?
That's easy for me. I mean, growing up with Sepp, watching him win a stage last year was,
That's pretty unreal.
yeah. And
Is he a climber? The hill
oh
climber?
yeah,
Is that what he is? That's where he succeeds.
He's a climber.
That's
Yeah. When are we going to see Ari? Are they already? Anybody
Not
riding
yet.
Ari
In
the
fact,
Tour
we
de
were
France?
so close about a year or two ago with inking a deal, but it didn't happen. And so that is certainly something, if it's right, timing is right, we
Yeah.
would love to be involved in that.
Coming
but
down the line.
We just have to make sure that we get the right situation.
Totally.
So if you ever to do a leg of the Tour de France in your peak condition, would you be doing the Pyrenees, or what would you be doing?
Oh, so you know what? I think of myself more as a climber. I like to, I'd probably get clobbered in one of the sprints down at the, the flatland sprints, those guys down there. So I would thrill doing a Pyrenees climb or Alpe d'Huez or one of those. I think it would be awesome. That's a bucket list.
Who's some of your favorite riders of all time?
Oh, gosh. I actually love all the American riders too. We cheer them on. I think it's partially because for whatever reason, it hasn't reached the level here that it should and that it needs to. But outside of there, I mean, I've loved watching Tadej Pogacar and some of these other riders that are just the competitive nature of it. It's really, just anybody that will take and try to do insurmountable things, something that is beyond belief. I mean, it ties back, by the way, into one of our other athletes that I just love is our Iron Cowboy, James Lawrence.
No way. I didn't know he was with you guys.
Yeah, that did the 50 Ironman or
No
50
way.
Ironmans in 50 days, and then the 100 later.
Oh.
and it's just one of those things where anybody that will go out and just, take what is possible and expand that boundary, I think
That
is so
unreal.
cool.
Unreal. So last question for you. What do you see happening in the next 5 years with Ari?
Oh, man. We built this company for the long haul.
Yeah.
It's never been about a quick, get rich quick and dump it type of thing.
Yeah.
It is, so we will continue to grow this.
You're living what you want. You're living the dream. There's no it doesn't seem like there's any sort of projection of, if we could just get Ari to X, then we've made it.
Yeah.
It seems like you're just kind of enjoying the whole ride.
Well, we always set goals, but in our building down there, we have one banner. We have a lot of these principles that we govern ourselves by, and one of them is one pedal stroke at a time. So, if you're looking up at a mountain and you go, oh man, I'm not feeling it today.
That's
I'm not
right.
going to be able to hit that. But just break it down into smaller goals. You'll be able to do it. And I guess that ties back into how are we going to situate ourselves 4-5 years from now with AI coming, with all of these other things in the industry. The way we are, we base our company on a lot of just principles and not a lot of rules, and we give our people a ton of freedom.
Sounds like a fun company to work for.
And so it's like, get out, this is the direction that we're going, but let me enable you. And I kind of look at myself as a little bit of, let me remove an obstacle. If there's something in the way that can help you achieve your goals, and then let's attain it. What do we need to do?
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming and spending the time with us.
Seriously.
Obviously
Absolutely.
super impressed with the brand and everything that you've done for the community and for the whole the whole bike industry. You've done a remarkable
Oh,
job.
well, thank you
It's
very
such a cool
much.
brand.
So thanks again.
Thank you.
Maximize your sales team's potential with Volcanic Retail University. Our courses cover everything from foundational retail knowledge to advanced strategies for established brands. Go to university.volcanicretail.io and use code RWG for 30% off.